Welcome back to our second part of our lecture. I just wanted to share a video with you guys um, to start off our conversation about the criminal justice system and how we have to determine really what the role is in criminal justice. Are we maintaining justice or protecting society, or is it a combination? Um, so I want you to think when you watch this video, um, what is the possible reasons for lack of national coverage of this type of news? And do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that? Just some thoughts to ponder to yourself.
Preventing a mass shooting just 2 days after the murders at Sandy Hook Elementary School. It's a story that has not gotten a lot of attention. Sergeant Lisa Castellano, who was working security at a Texas movie theater when the suspect entered a nearby restaurant and opened fire. Police say the shooter then ran into the theater, where Castellano chased him down and shot him, ending the threat. Trace Gallagher has more live in LA. Trace?
And Megan, some say the reason this didn't get a lot of attention is because that nobody died, but others say the reason the media totally ignored this is because it's a case of a good person with a gun stopping a bad person with a gun. Police say the suspect, 19-year-old Jesus Garcia, went to a Chinese restaurant where he worked to kill his ex-girlfriend. He shot up the outside of the restaurant, went inside, continued shooting. He chased a fellow employee out the back door, and then a San Antonio police officer pulled up and the suspect shot out the officer's windshield. The suspect then went into a crowded movie theater and continued firing. Listen.
I got all my kids in the stall. I hit all my kids against the wall. She was sitting on the toilet seat, he was sitting like that, and I was standing against the door.
We heard popping, and it was like it had to be a semi-automatic because it was just going on.
Yeah, it was.
We thought we were going to die.
Yeah, pop, pop, pop. Police say he fired off some 30 rounds. He shot one person in the back. That person did survive. He had plenty of ammunition left. But an off-duty sheriff's deputy working as a security guard went into the bathroom of that movie theater and shot the suspect 4 times, who also lived, evading what could have been a bloodbath. Listen.
We are fortunate that we have this officer that was well trained and took the action that she needed to take. And I believe she saved as many lives as she had to save.
I'm not gonna lie, it was frightening, but the training kicks in, and thank you to the sheriff's office for all of the training that was given.
Yeah, kind of hard to hear her. That was the woman, by the way. She is Deputy Lisa Castellano. She has now been given the Sheriff's Department Medal of Valor, recognized for heroism, and a lot of moviegoers inside that theater are very glad that she was armed when that gunman came in that night, Megan.
Wow. Trace, thanks.
So I want you guys to think about that situation. As a former police officer, it gives me a little bit of chills because we don't get in law enforcement a lot of public recognition of the good things that we do. And I say we because I think once you're involved in the criminal justice system at that level, especially in law enforcement, you always are. You always have a little place in your heart. I mean, the number one thing to remember when we're talking about this, guys, is that it is not human nature or natural to run or go toward gunfire. Your natural instinct is to go away from gunfire. So, as in this young lady, police officer, who went into that bathroom where he was firing rounds, she made a conscious decision to do that, knowing that she very well could have walked into that bathroom and been shot dead. So it is about training. But I just am curious, and through this video, for you guys to think about, what are the reasons that coverage of this type of story is lacking? Something to think about. All right, so let's talk about how the criminal justice system works. So, to understand the structure, you must understand the concept of federalism. Federalism is defined as a form of government in which the powers are shared by the federal government, and the states. So the framers of the Constitution were really fearful of tyranny and too powerful of a central national government, so they chose the system of federalism to compromise and give the states some power. So let's talk about federalism in action. So the appeal of federalism is that it establishes a strong national government capable of handling large-scale problems while allowing the states to have some power in local traditions of how a state really is. So when we're talking about federal criminal law, let's go back for you guys here. We're talking about federal criminal law. We're talking about the Constitution, and it really gives the national government certain express powers, such as the power to, coin money, raise an army, regulate interstate commerce. But all other powers were really left to the states, and that included police power, which allowed the states to enact whatever laws are necessary, protecting the health, the morals, safety, and welfare of the citizens. An example of this is marijuana use. We know that under federal law, any use of marijuana is illegal. The DEA recently reaffirmed marijuana's status as a Schedule I drug. It's in the same class as heroin because of its high potential for abuse. And at the same time, we have many states. At the time that this information was updated, it was in 2019. And at that time, there was 28 states that allowed marijuana consumption for medicinal purposes or for recreational use as well. And I'm not sure what the number of states are right now. You guys probably know more about that than I do, being a little bit younger. But really classifying it as the same thing as heroin, what do you guys think about that? There definitely is some changes that are happening. I just read that a law effective the 1st of January in Oregon in reference to mushrooms, so psychedelic mushrooms for medicinal uses to treat anxiety and depression. It's really interesting. But again, remember that's at a state's level. So federalism gives the states the power to make some changes. And where that gets dicey is when we get into different rules that govern certain jobs in a state where it is legal at a state level, but illegal at a federal level. So it can be really confusing and affect a lot of lives for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 levels of law enforcement. So we can see these ideals of federalism clearly in local, state, and federal levels of law. So we have local law enforcement, and the duties of law enforcement agencies are really split between counties and municipalities. Grant County, Moses Lake. I'm total break. Like Spokane County and Spokane. I was going to throw out a Wenatchee area, and I was like, wait, is Wenatchee in Douglas County or Lincoln County? Or oftentimes we can have 2 counties that's Chelan County and Douglas, I think. So often in a municipality, there can be more than 1 county. Okay, so like going out Highway 17 towards Othello, we cross into Adams County. There are areas that are, those areas might have some overlap. I'm trying to think if there's, the best example I can tell you guys for this is I was a police officer in North Charleston, South Carolina. Okay, North Charleston was a large city, but it encompassed 3 separate counties. There were areas in the city limits that were in 3 different counties. So the sheriff's department for each county, Grant County Sheriffs, Adams County Sheriffs, Chelan County Sheriffs, they have jurisdiction over that whole county. But the municipalities just have jurisdiction over that small area. So when we talk about sheriff's departments, there is an elected official who is elected by the community to serve as the sheriff, often for a 2 or 4 year term. And so in municipalities, we have a hired position, a police chief. So we have the Grant County Sheriff, and then we have the Moses Lake Police Chief. So it's really important that we distinguish between those two. When we're talking about local police, we're really wanting to remember that they're responsible for the nuts and bolts. They investigate most crimes that occur. They're also going to be deterring crime. They're apprehending criminals, participating in trial proceedings. Police can also, in municipalities, have to provide some sort of social services like assisting domestic violence victims or child abuse victims. So there are some differences there. And then we roll on to state law enforcement. So these are our white vehicle Washington State Troopers that we see on the roadway. They are working within counties and also within cities, right? So they have jurisdiction much larger. They have jurisdiction to work within any part of the state that they represent. Often state police, highway patrol is what they're classified, but some other state law enforcers are fire marshals, state fish and game, wildlife officers. We always get lots of students interested in that area, being a game warden. Those are at a state level. And then federal law enforcement. So the Department of Homeland Security really combines police powers of 24 federal agencies to protect the United States. And then there's other federal agencies that work, that have police powers that we consider to be federal. So you can see here on this slide when we talk about the FBI, the DEA, the Secret Service, the ATF, all these acronyms that we hear a lot about. So they are at the federal level, and they have jurisdiction within any state in our nation and any city within that state. So let's just look at the essential elements. Wait, I think I missed the courts. Oh, we'll move on to the courts next. So when we're talking about, well, there it is. Goodness. The correction system, we're going to include the courts, obviously. I thought maybe they had it separated out. So the United States has a dual court system, and what that means is that it has 2 independent judicial systems, one at a federal level and one at a state level. So what this translates to is 52 different court systems, 1 federal court system and 50 different state court systems, plus that of the District of Columbia, DC. So the criminal court and its work group, which, the judge, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, they really are charged with this responsibility of determining innocence or guilt of criminal justice suspects. There is a lot of information, so many cool videos on YouTube about the court system, and it's really interesting to learn more about how that works. When we get into talking about the court system, we will talk about it. So when we talk about the correction system, we're talking about some different areas. The first is probation. And when we're talking about probation, we are talking about being the most common correctional treatment. And this allows an offender to return to the community and to be supervised. An agent of the court, a probation officer, is going to be supervising them. So there has to be certain rules of conduct. So jails hold convicted, those that are convicted of crimes with short sentences. So incarceration, being going to jail, right? But the term jail, I want you guys to understand, is Grant County Jail. The term prison are for those that are convicted of more serious crimes. People get those terms mixed up. Oh, he went to jail. No, he went to prison for 20 years. It's different. So, generally speaking, counties and municipalities are overseeing and administering jails, while prisons are overseen by the state. So the Washington State Department of Corrections has multiple prisons in our state, the closest being an hour away from us or less in Connell, Coyote Ridge Correction Center, one of the largest prisons in our state. I believe it holds roughly 2,500 inmates. I might be off on that, but I did teach there for a year, so lots of cool stories about the Ridge, is what we called it. So we also have community-based corrections, and this is really increasing in popularity as people are starting to see that research shows that locking people behind closed doors does not work to rehabilitate. And I will impress upon this all quarter long, 98% of those that are in prison are gonna be out and be our neighbors. It's just how it works. Very few are gonna be there for life or till they die. And so what we need to remember is that we need them to come out and be able to be good, normal members of society. So it's important that piece of community-based corrections is that process of maybe having some integration of community-based sanctions, but also being able to get some skills to be able to be successful. So the most frequent type of release from a jail or prison is parole. And that's where an inmate serves part of their sentence in a correctional facility, and they're allowed to serve the rest of it in the community. So like someone on probation, a parolee must conform to certain conditions. But I want you guys to know that here in Washington State, we are one of the very few states in this whole nation that does not currently have a parole system. This is something I am extremely passionate about. I have been able to follow the legislature on this. We are working hard to get this passed, but it is really frightening when you look at the statistics of not having a parole system. So hopefully we can get back to that. It was eliminated, I believe, in the early to mid 80s. And that's really when the state hit this mass incarceration of just locking people. This was the war on drugs, the crack epidemic. And it's really why our prison populations are so high to this day. So I'm going to stop this right here. Go ahead and submit this as lecture 1.2 and give you guys a little break.